What's going on guys, Kate is here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 3 full tank builds after the update for PvP and PvE in New World. So for each and every single build I will explain what attributes and perks you want to have, then what gems and specific gear you want to use to get out your stats as much defensives and damage as possible. Then as well I will show you the best gameplay of me using different weapons so you would know which abilities you want to use first on your enemies and much more. So if all this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then moving over to the first build, which is the Void Gauntlet and Sword with Shield. And these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, if you start from level 0, you want to get your focus to 150 and then start building your constitution. And around level 60, you should have 200 focus and 200 constitution. And last but not the least, for your gear you want to go with full heavy armor and you have to use a shield as well. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the Void Gauntlet, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock the first ability called the Void Blade and then get these 3 perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the Petrifying Scream and then unlock the next 2 perks to him as well. Then now let's go over to the other side and unlock the last third ability, which is called the Orb of Decay, and then get all these 3 perks, and that's it. So then for our second weapon we have the best tanking weapon, aka the Sword with Shield, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first things first, right off from the start you want to unlock all these 3 abilities called the Shield Rush, Shield Bash and Defiant Stance, and then afterwards get all these 5 perks. Then after you have unlocked those perks you want to unlock these 3 more perks. And yes, the way I said it, you should unlock the first 5 perks and then the only 3 perks. And this will give you a slight advantage than just normally unlocking perks and abilities in whatever order you wanted. And then lastly, let's move over to the left side and get these 3 perks, and that's it. Now again, you can unlock all the other perks in whatever way you like. Okay, so let's go over to the gameplay where I will show you the best way to play this build. So first of all, for the Void Gauntlet we have the first Q ability called the Void Blade, and after activating you basically get a Void Dagger, which you can use like any other melee weapon, and by using auto attacks not only you will do a lot of damage but as well reduce your enemy's damage absorption. Then the second ability is called the Petrifying Scream, which when using will deal damage, stagger and root enemies in front of you for 2 seconds. And lastly we have the third ability, which is called the Orb of Decay, and you can fire this orb which can go through your enemies, and each enemy that it hits it will deal decent damage and reduce their damage absorption, and then later that orb will come back and heal your nearby teammates and yourself. And lastly, if you hold the right mouse button you can get your mana back, but it will remove your health. So for this specific build I definitely do not recommend to use this mechanic. Then moving over to the second weapon, which is the sword, and for your Q spell we have the Shield Rush ability, and this spell makes your character run very fast for 5 meters. If you hit the target while running he will get knocked back. Then our second ability is called the Shield Bash, which when using will deal decent damage and stun your targets in front of you for 2 seconds. And if you're using this ability in PvE you can generate threat level, and as a tank pull mobs on you. And then lastly we have the third ability called the Defiant Stance, which you can activate, and for the next 8 seconds your resistance is increased. Or again in PvE as well you can activate the spell and increase your threat level again, which will make all mobs target you. So like you can see, not only all the spells will stun and knock back our enemy, but as well they're useful in PvE. So in general this build is all around a great choice for all activities in the game. So the best way to attack a player is first of all use your sword and shield, and while blocking move to the target. Then when you're close enough use your Shield Rush and knock the enemy back. Then when he gets back up stun him with a Shield Bash. And now switch to the Void Gauntlet and activate the Void Blade ability, and keep on auto attacking the enemy while using both F and R abilities. Then lastly, to protect yourself I always save it for later, but if a lot of damage is incoming then switch to the sword and use your Defiant Stance ability, and all of your resistance will be increased for 30%. So just remember that as a tank you use Void Gauntlet to still do damage to enemies from afar, or use it to pull mobs from very far distance without you having to run to them, and then at the same time you can switch to the sword and shield and be a real strong tank. So with all this said, now let's go over my final conclusions for this build. This Void Gauntlet and sword with shield weapon combination is very good for group PvP as well PvE. And then last but not the least, for the Void Gauntlet you want to use the Opal gem, and then for your sword you want to go with the Amber gem for PvP and use the Carnelian gem for PvE. And lastly, for all of your gear get the Enix gems, and that's about it. And of course, when you're using the sword, don't forget to keep on using your heavy rolls, so your stamina would not be at 100%, and this will increase your damage by 15%. And we chose to go with the amber gem to make the sword go from strength attribute to now scale with focus. And by doing that, we increase our damage, and at the same time, we don't have to spend any points in strength category. So if you're looking for the new best tank build, then this is the one for you, so enjoy! So then, moving over to the second build, which is the great axe and warhammer, and these are the attributes you want to have. So then, no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your strength to 100 or even 150, and then start building your constitution. And around level 60 you should have 200 strength and 200 constitution. And then last but not the least, for your armor you want to be in the heavy category, which means using again all heavy equipment plus a shield on your back if you want to get as many cool things as you can. But for this build it's not required and won't give you any extra stats or anything like that. So then for our first weapon we have the great axe, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock the first ability called the reap and then get these two perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the charge and then get these two perks. Then from this point now let's move over to the other side and unlock all these three perks. Then lastly unlock the last third ability called the gravity well and then get these three perks. And now from this point you'll feel free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. Okay, and now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the warhammer, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock the first ability called the clear out and then get these two perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the shockwave and then get these two perks. And lastly unlock the last third ability called the path of destiny and then get these two perks. And now from this point let's take a closer look at the left side and unlock all these three perks, and that's it. Now again you can spend your points in whatever order you like. So then let's move over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this tank build and how to get out of your abilities the best possible results. So first things first, for your great axe Q ability we have the gravity well, which you can aim and shoot, and if you hit the target in that electric storm he will take damage and get stunned. Then the second ability is called the reap, which basically extends your axe for 5 meters, and if the enemy is running away you can pull him back. And lastly we have the F ability called the charge, and this is another dash ability which will deal decent damage and give you more mobility. And now let's go straight into the warhammer, and the first Q spell is called the clear out, and it is a wide swing that knocks back all targets in 4-meter range. Then our R ability is called the shockwave, and when using the spell it will give us the ability to slam down the hammer and create a small earthquake, and all players standing in it will get stunned for 2 seconds. And lastly we have the F ability called the path of destiny, which creates a huge electric wave, and all enemies standing in this path will take a bunch of damage. So the way you want to attack a player is by using your great axe and then activating the gravity well, and then follow that up with the charge ability. Then when the enemy is out of all of your stuns he will probably try to run, so use the reap ability and pull him back. Now switch to the warhammer and either way use your shockwave or path of destiny to stun or deal damage, or save it for later, and keep on using auto attacks plus the block, so you do 1 or 2 normal attacks and then block in between. So like you can see with this build there is no one best way to use your spells. The most important thing is to know what each ability does, and with time and practice you will know what to do in each situation. Then my first step for this build is if you're fighting against another melee player, then like I said use 1 or 2 normal attacks and then in between remember to use blocking system. But if you fight against a ranged player then don't forget to use the heavy jumps, and to reach a player don't just run into a straight line but try to run from one side to another, and this will make you a lot harder target to hit. Okay, and now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This great axe and warhammer weapon combination right now is super good, and as you're using a heavy armor you can still survive for very long but at the same time deal bunch of damage. So then lastly for your warhammer and great axe for PvP you want to use the opal gem, and then for PvE use the carnelian gem, and then for all of your gear get the Enix gems. So if you were looking for a tank build that does still a lot of damage and can survive, then this is the build for you, so have fun. And now moving over to my last and final build, which is the greatsword and sword with shield, and these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, if you start from level 0 you want to get your strength and dexterity to 200 and then start building your constitution, and around level 60 you should have 200 strength, 150 dexterity and 100 constitution. And then last but not the least for your gear you want to go with the medium category, and you want to use one of those circle shaped small shields as well. And yes, each shield type has different weight, so don't forget to use the lightest shield, that still will make you in the medium category. So then taking a closer look at the first weapon, which is the greatsword, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first things first, you want to unlock the first ability called the crosscut, and then get these 2 perks. Then now get the second ability called the skyward slash, and then get these 2 perks. Then from here, let's move over to the other side and unlock these 2 perks, and then the last final ability called the steadfast strike, and then get these 2 perks, and that's it. Now from this moment, you can spend your points in whatever way you like. So then moving over to the second weapon, which is the sword, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all, you want to select these 2 perks, and then the first ability called the leaping strike, and then get these 2 perks. Then from here, let's go over to the other side and unlock the last 2 abilities called the shield rush and shield bash, and then lastly get these 2 perks, and that's it. Now again from this point and onwards, you can spend your points in whatever way you prefer. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. And for the first weapon we have the greatsword, and your first Q ability is called the crosscut, which will perform 3 quick slash attacks, that with each attack will do more damage. Then the second skill is called the skyward slash, which will swing up your sword that will stagger, do damage and apply a range stacks on the enemy. And then lastly we have the steadfast strike, which will stab your enemies and can do up to 2 hits, which will do damage more and more and restore mana upon finishing the animation. And in PvE, this skill can be used to aggro all the monsters as well. And then for the second weapon we have the sword with shield, and your Q spell is called the leaping strike, which will make you leap forwards that will do damage and stagger the enemy. Then the second skill is called the shield rush, which will quickly make your character rush forwards while dealing damage and pushing back your enemy. This skill is great for counter attacks, to cancel the enemy animation, or to help out your teammates. And then lastly we have the shield bash, which is a short skill that will stun the enemy for 2 seconds. And this is the longest stunning ability in the game. Okay, so then let's move over to the rotation, and as I've already said, if you're farming mobs in PvE or doing PvP, the same general principles and rules apply. So at the start of the fight you want to use the sword and shield, and use the leaping strike to close the distance between you and the enemy. Then now use the shield rush, and then when the stagger ends, right away use the shield bash, which is the longest stun in the game. So then in those few seconds, now we want to switch to the greatsword and use the crosscuts, and keep spamming the heavy attacks. Then when the enemy starts dealing back damage to you, then now we use the skyward slash to do damage and stagger. And then lastly we use the steadfast strike, and then from here we just keep on using the greatsword attacks till the enemy gets eliminated. Or if you ever get in trouble, then switch back to the sword with shield and just keep on blocking the enemy attack by holding the right click, and that's it. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This greatsword and sword with shield weapon combination is super fun to play, and as you're using a medium armor, you can take some damage and at the same time do very high DPS numbers. So then last but not the least, for the greatsword and sword with shield, you want to use the opal gem, and then for all of your gear use 3 malachite and 2 onyx gems. And then lastly on your character you want to equip the heart rune of detonate. And then on top of all this, to find out the best weapon and gear perks, watch this video, which is titled "Which weapon and gear perks are the best for your build?" You can find the link in this video's description or just scroll through my channel. And in that video I will specifically explain how perks work and which ones are the best for your gear and weapons and much more. So in a quick summary, if you're looking to do high damage and you want a fun greatsword build, then this is the one for you, so enjoy. And that's about it. So I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good new world builds that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you won't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I will see you in my next video, so take it easy, peace.